I was standing in my driveway when I noticed the certified letter taped to my front door, and something in my gut told me this was going to ruin my perfectly good Tuesday morning. The envelope bore the seal of the Meadowbrook Hills Homeowners Association, and my hands actually trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a document that made my blood run cold. A lien. They had filed a lien against my property for $27,000 in supposed unpaid fees, violations, and penalties dating back 3 years. I read it twice, then a third time, because none of it made any sense. I had paid every single HOA fee on time since I bought this house in rural Oklahoma 4 years ago. My name is Vincent Zimmerman, and I had moved to this quiet corner of Osage County to escape the chaos of Oklahoma City. The house was a modest ranch on 15 acres of rolling prairie land, and I had thought joining an HOA would mean nothing more than keeping my grass trimmed and my fence painted. I was wrong. I grabbed my phone and called the HOA office immediately. A chirpy receptionist answered and put me through to the HOA president after I explained why I was calling. The woman who picked up had a voice like nails on a chalkboard. "Mr. Zimmerman, this is Patricia Henderson. I assume you are calling about the lien?" "You're damn right I am calling about it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is complete nonsense. I have paid every fee on time. I have bank statements proving it." "Our records show otherwise," Patricia said, her tone dismissive. "You have accumulated various violations over the past 3 years. Unapproved exterior paint color, lawn height violations, unauthorized structures, and unpaid special assessments." "What unauthorized structures? What special assessments? I never received notice of any of this." "Ignorance of the rules is not an excuse, Mr. Zimmerman. The lien is legally filed and recorded with the county. If you wish to dispute it, you may request a hearing with the board. However, the lien remains in place until the matter is resolved. Good day." She hung up on me. I stood there staring at my phone in disbelief. This could not be happening. A lien of this size could destroy my credit, prevent me from refinancing, and even lead to foreclosure if left unresolved. I immediately drove into town to see my attorney, Marcus Webb, a good friend who had handled my property purchase. His office was in a converted Victorian house in downtown Pawhuska, and he saw the panic on my face the moment I walked in. "Vincent, what is wrong?" he asked, gesturing for me to sit. I handed him the lien paperwork. He read through it carefully, his frown deepening with each page. "This is aggressive," he said finally. "Have you actually violated any of these provisions?" "No, none of them. I have been a model homeowner. My house is beige, which was the color when I bought it. My lawn is always maintained. I have not built anything without approval, and I never received notice of any special assessments." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "HOAs can be petty, but this is extreme. A lien of this size for minor violations? Something does not add up. Let me do some digging. In the meantime, gather every piece of documentation you have, bank statements, receipts, photographs of your property, everything." I spent the next 2 days compiling evidence, every canceled check, every email, every piece of correspondence with the HOA. What I discovered made my suspicions grow. There were no violations on record before 6 months ago. Then, suddenly, they started appearing in rapid succession. Notices I had never received were dated and filed, claiming they had been mailed to my address. But the strangest part came when I reviewed the lien document more carefully. Buried in the legal jargon was a clause I had almost missed. If the lien remained unpaid for 90 days, the HOA could initiate foreclosure proceedings. And according to the fine print, any foreclosure would include not just the surface land, but all mineral rights associated with the property. That hit me like a truck. Mineral rights. When I bought the property, one of the selling points was that I retained full mineral rights. This was Oklahoma, and mineral rights could be valuable. But I had never thought much about it because nothing had ever been developed on my land or the surrounding area. I called Marcus immediately and told him what I had found. "That is very unusual," he said slowly. "HOA liens typically cover only the amount owed plus legal fees. Including mineral rights in a foreclosure clause is highly irregular. Vincent, I think you need to have your land surveyed and assessed. Something is going on here." "You think they know something about my property?" "I think it is worth investigating. Do you know anyone in geology or mineral assessment?" I did not, but Marcus did. He referred me to Dr. Gerald Hastings, a geologist who had worked in the Oklahoma oil and gas industry for 30 years before transitioning to private consulting. I called him that afternoon and explained the situation. "Interesting, Doctor," Hastings said. "Osage County has a complex geological history. Lots of oil and gas activity historically, but also other mineral deposits. I can come out and do a preliminary assessment if you like. My rate is $200 an hour." "Do it," I said without hesitation. "I need to know what I am dealing with." Dr. Hastings arrived 3 days later, a weathered man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. He brought equipment I did not recognize, devices for measuring soil composition, electromagnetic sensors, and surveying tools. He spent the entire day walking my property, taking samples and making notes. When he finished, he asked to sit down at my kitchen table. The look on his face told me he had found something significant. "Mr. Zimmerman, are you aware of what lies beneath your property?" "No idea. Oil? Natural gas?" "Better," he said, spreading out a geological map. "Your property sits atop a rare earth element deposit, specifically significant concentrations of neodymium and dysprosium." I stared at him blankly. "What does that mean in English?" "Rare earth elements are critical for modern technology. Electric vehicles, wind turbines, smartphones, military equipment. They are incredibly valuable, and the United States imports most of them from China. Finding domestic sources has become a national priority. Based on my preliminary assessment, your 15 acres could contain deposits worth tens of millions of dollars, possibly more with a full survey." The room seemed to tilt. Tens of millions? At minimum, the market price for these elements has skyrocketed in the past 5 years. Companies are desperately seeking domestic sources. If what I'm seeing is accurate, your property could be worth anywhere from $20 to $50 million just in mineral value. My mind raced. Could the HOA know about this? "Doctor." Hastings folded his arms. "That would be my guess. Rare earth deposits are not widely known to the general public, but anyone with access to geological surveys or industry connections could have found out. If someone did their homework, they would know your property is sitting on a gold mine, figuratively and literally. So they file a fake lien, force me into foreclosure, and steal my mineral rights. That would be my suspicion. It is fraud, of course, criminal fraud, but it is clever. Most people would not question an HOA lien, especially one that seems official." I felt anger burning in my chest. "We need to document this. Can you provide a full written report?" "Absolutely. I will have something comprehensive within a week. But Mr. Zimmerman, if I am right about this, you need to be very careful. We are talking about a lot of money. People do desperate things for far less." That night, I could barely sleep. My mind kept spinning through possibilities. Who at the HOA knew about the mineral deposits? How long had they been planning this? And what would they do when they realized I was not going to roll over? I met with Marcus the next morning and showed him Dr. Hastings's preliminary findings. His eyes widened as he read through the report. "This is huge, Vincent. If we can prove the HOA filed this lien fraudulently to steal your mineral rights, we are talking about criminal charges, wire fraud, potentially conspiracy. This goes way beyond a civil dispute." "What do we do?" "First, we file a motion to dismiss the lien in county court. We present evidence that you have paid all legitimate fees and that the violations are fabricated. Second, we go public with the mineral rights issue. If the HOA is doing this to you, they might be targeting other properties too. Third, we contact law enforcement. This is fraud, and it needs to be investigated." Will the motion stop the foreclosure clock? It should, but courts can be slow. We need to move fast. The good news is we have solid evidence. The bad news is we are going up against an organization with legal resources. We filed the motion that afternoon. Marcus also sent a strongly worded letter to Patricia Henderson and the HOA board, outlining our findings and demanding the immediate removal of the lien. He made it clear we had evidence of fraud and were prepared to pursue criminal charges if necessary. The response came faster than I expected. 2 days later, I received a letter from a law firm in Tulsa representing the HOA. The letter was aggressive, threatening me with additional legal action if I continued to make baseless accusations and defamatory statements against the board. They claimed the lien was entirely legitimate and that my attempts to avoid payment were frivolous. But there was something else in the letter. A settlement offer. The HOA was willing to reduce the lien amount to $10,000 if I paid immediately and signed a release of all claims. Reading between the lines, they were getting nervous. "They are scared," Marcus said when I showed him the letter. "They would not offer a settlement if they thought their position was solid. They are trying to make this go away before it blows up in their faces." "I am not paying them a dime," I said. "They are thieves and I want them exposed." "Good, because we just got a court date. The hearing on your motion is scheduled for 3 weeks from now." Those 3 weeks were tense. I kept expecting something to happen, some new move from the HOA, but things remained quiet. Too quiet. I started noticing a car parked down the road from my property at odd hours, a black sedan with tinted windows. It was never there long, but it appeared that every few days. I mentioned it to Marcus, and he told me to document everything, take photos, note the times, record the license plate if possible. I did, though part of me wondered if I was being paranoid. Dr. Hastings delivered his full report 5 days before the hearing. It was a 100-page document with geological surveys, soil samples, market analysis, and projections. His conclusion was even more stunning than his preliminary assessment. Based on core samples and electromagnetic surveys, he estimated the rare earth deposits on my property could be worth between $40 and $70 million depending on extraction costs and market conditions. He also discovered something else. 3 years ago, a geological consulting firm had been hired by the county to conduct a mineral survey of the area. That survey had identified my property and several surrounding parcels as high-value targets. The survey was public record, but buried in county archives where most people would never find it. Anyone with industry connections could have accessed this, Dr. Hastings explained. It would not take much effort. A simple records request at the county office. Marcus immediately sent a paralegal to the county office to pull the full survey. What we found was damning. The survey had been accessed multiple times in the past 2 years. One of those requests came from a holding company called Osage Mineral Holdings, LLC. Marcus dug deeper. Osage Mineral Holdings was registered in Delaware, which made ownership information harder to trace. But with some clever legal maneuvering and help from a private investigator, we made a connection. The registered agent for Osage Mineral Holdings was an attorney who also served as legal counsel for the Meadowbrook Hills HOA. It all clicked into place. Someone within or connected to the HOA had discovered the mineral deposits, created a shell company, and was using the HOA to file fraudulent liens against property owners. Once the properties went into foreclosure, Osage Mineral Holdings would swoop in and buy them for pennies on the dollar, securing the mineral rights in the process. "This is a criminal conspiracy," Marcus said, his voice tight with anger. "We need to bring this to the district attorney." We contacted the Osage County District Attorney's Office the next day. The prosecutor assigned to review our evidence was a sharp woman in her 40s named Catherine Stone. She listened carefully as we laid out the entire case, providing documents, geological reports, and the connection between the HOA and Osage Mineral Holdings. "This is substantial," she said when we finished. "If what you are saying is true, we are looking at fraud, conspiracy, theft by deception, and possibly racketeering. I will need to investigate further, but I think you have grounds for criminal charges." "What about the hearing?" I asked. "That is in 4 days." "Proceed with your civil case. It will take time for criminal charges to be filed, but your evidence should be enough to get the lien dismissed. In the meantime, I will start pulling records and interviewing witnesses." The hearing was held in the Osage County Courthouse, a stately building in downtown Pawhuska. I sat beside Marcus at the plaintiff's table, while Patricia Henderson and 2 other board members sat across the aisle with their attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. The judge was a no-nonsense woman named Judge Rita Coleman. She reviewed the initial filings, then looked up at both parties. "This court is here to determine whether the lien filed by the Meadowbrook Hills Homeowners Association against Mr. Vincent Zimmerman's property is valid. Mr. Webb, You may present your case." Marcus stood and methodically laid out our evidence. Bank statements showing I had paid every HOA fee on time. Photographs proving there were no violations. Proof that I had never received notice of any special assessments. And then, the bombshell. Dr. Hastings's geological report and the connection between the HOA and Osage Mineral Holdings. "Your Honor, this is not a simple dispute over HOA fees," Marcus said. "This is a calculated scheme to defraud my client of property worth tens of millions of dollars. The lien is fraudulent, the violations are fabricated, and the individuals behind this scheme are currently under investigation by the District Attorney's Office for criminal conspiracy." The HOA attorney jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, these are wild accusations with no basis in fact. Mr. Zimmerman owes legitimate debts to the association, and this attempt to muddy the waters with conspiracy theories is desperate and inappropriate." Judge Coleman held up a hand. "I will review the evidence and make my determination. Mr. Webb, do you have documentation proving the connection between the HOA and this holding company?" Marcus handed over the corporate filings, the records requests, and the geological survey. Judge Coleman spent 20 minutes reviewing everything in silence. The courtroom was so quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat. Finally, she looked up. "I find the evidence presented by Mr. Zimmerman to be compelling. The bank records clearly show all HOA fees were paid on time. The photographs indicate no violations of the covenants. And the connection between the HOA's legal counsel and Osage Mineral Holdings raises serious questions about the legitimacy of this lien." The HOA attorney tried to interrupt, but Judge Coleman silenced him with a look. "Furthermore, the inclusion of mineral rights in the foreclosure clause is highly irregular and suggests an ulterior motive. I'm granting Mr. Zimmerman's motion. The lien is dismissed with prejudice. The HOA is ordered to file the necessary paperwork to remove the lien from Mr. Zimmerman's property immediately. Additionally, I am awarding Mr. Zimmerman attorney's fees and court costs. This matter is closed." The gavel came down, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Marcus shook my hand, grinning. "We did it," he said. "The lien is gone." But as we left the courtroom, I saw Patricia Henderson glaring at me with pure hatred in her eyes. She leaned over to whisper something to the attorney, and I knew this was not over. Not really. The next day, Catherine Stone from the DA's office called me. "Mr. Zimmerman, we have been moving quickly on this investigation. Based on your evidence and additional records we have pulled, we have enough to bring charges. I wanted to give you a heads up. Arrests will be made tomorrow morning." "Who are you arresting?" "Patricia Henderson, the HOA president. Robert Caldwell, the attorney who represents both the HOA and Osage Mineral Holdings, and 2 other board members who were involved in the scheme. We are also seizing the assets of Osage Mineral Holdings." "What charges?" "Wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted theft, and filing false documents. These are serious felonies. If convicted, they are looking at significant prison time." I felt a grim satisfaction. "Good, they tried to steal my life. There is one more thing. We believe your property was not the only target. We are looking at 2 other properties in the same HOA that had similar liens filed against them. Both owners paid rather than fight. We think they might be victims too. Can they get their money back? We will try, but it depends on whether we can recover assets from Osage Mineral Holdings and the individuals involved." The arrests happened the next morning, and it made the local news. The headline in the Pawhuska Journal-Capital read, "HOA President Arrested in Multi-Million-Dollar Fraud Scheme." The story detailed the charges and the alleged plot to steal mineral rights from homeowners. My name was not mentioned, but the article made it clear this was a serious criminal case. I watched the news coverage from my living room, feeling a mix of emotions, relief that justice was being served, anger at what they had tried to do, and a lingering unease that I could not quite shake. That unease was justified. 2 nights after the arrests, I heard breaking glass downstairs. I grabbed my phone and my shotgun and crept down the stairs. Someone had thrown a brick through my front window. Attached to it was a note. "You should have taken the settlement. This is not over." I called the police immediately. 2 deputies arrived within 15 minutes and took a report. They dusted for fingerprints and took the note as evidence, but there was not much else they could do. Mr. Zimmerman, given the circumstances, you might want to consider extra security, one deputy said. Cameras, motion sensors, maybe even staying somewhere else for a few nights. I refused to be driven from my own home, but I did install security cameras the next day, 4 of them covering every angle of the property. I also changed the locks and made sure the shotgun was loaded and accessible. The harassment continued. Someone slashed my tires 3 days later. Then my mailbox was vandalized, ripped right out of the ground. Each incident was reported to the police, but they could not catch whoever was doing it. Marcus advised me to get a restraining order, but against whom? Patricia Henderson and the others were out on bail, but I had no proof they were behind the harassment. Then, a week after the arrests, I received a visitor. It was late afternoon, and I was working on fixing the mailbox when a car pulled into my driveway. A woman in her early 30s stepped out, looking nervous. Mr. Zimmerman, my name is Grace Mitchell. I am one of your neighbors in the HOA. Can I talk to you for a minute? I set down my tools and gestured for her to continue. I read about the arrests in the paper, she said, and I think I was a victim too. 2 years ago, the HOA filed a lien against my property. It was for $8,000, supposedly for violations and unpaid assessments. I could not afford to fight it, so I paid. But now I am wondering if it was fake, just like yours. Do you still have the paperwork? Yes, all of it. You need to contact the district attorney's office. They are investigating other cases. You might be able to get your money back. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you. I just wanted you to know that what you did fighting back, it is giving people like me hope. A lot of us have been bullied by this HOA for years, but we were too scared to do anything. After she left, I realized how big this had become. It was not just about me anymore. It was about everyone the HOA had victimized. The criminal trial was scheduled for 6 months later, but the prosecution moved quickly to build their case. Catherine Stone kept me updated on the progress. They had found evidence of at least 4 other properties that had been targeted with fraudulent liens. 2 owners had paid, 1 had lost their home to foreclosure, and 1 was still fighting. The foreclosed property was the most heartbreaking. An elderly veteran named Thomas Reed had lost his home after failing to pay a lien for $12,000. He could not afford an attorney and did not know how to fight the system. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. The property had been sold at auction to a buyer who turned out to be another shell company connected to Osage Mineral Holdings. Catherine Stone managed to get the foreclosure reversed based on the fraud, and Thomas was able to reclaim his home. When I met him at the courthouse, he shook my hand with tears streaming down his face. Thank you, he kept saying. Thank you for fighting. I thought I had lost everything. You do not need to thank me, I said. This should never have happened to you. As the trial date approached, the defense attorneys tried every trick in the book to get the charges dismissed or reduced. They argued there was no evidence of criminal intent, that it was all a misunderstanding, that the lien filings were based on legitimate concerns. But the evidence was overwhelming. Emails between Patricia Henderson and Robert Caldwell discussing the mineral deposits. Financial records showing money flowing from Osage Mineral Holdings to their personal accounts. Testimony from other homeowners who had been targeted. The geological survey proving they knew about the rare earth elements. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day, sitting in the gallery and watching as the prosecution systematically dismantled the defense. Patricia Henderson took the stand and tried to claim ignorance, saying she was just following the advice of the HOA attorney. But under cross-examination, she crumbled. Catherine Stone produced emails where Patricia had explicitly discussed the value of the mineral rights and strategies for acquiring properties. Robert Caldwell tried to claim attorney-client privilege and refused to answer questions, but the judge held him in contempt and threatened to add obstruction charges if he did not cooperate. Eventually, he admitted to creating Osage Mineral Holdings and advising the HOA on how to file the liens, though he continued to insist it was all legal. The jury did not buy it. After 2 days of deliberation, they returned guilty verdicts on all counts for all defendants. Patricia Henderson, Robert Caldwell, and the 2 other board members were convicted of wire fraud, conspiracy, and filing false documents. Sentencing happened a month later. Patricia Henderson received 8 years in federal prison. Robert Caldwell got 10 years plus disbarment. The other 2 board members received 5 years each. Additionally, they were ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, including the value of lost properties and legal fees. I was in the courtroom when the sentences were read. Patricia Henderson sobbed as she was led away in handcuffs. I felt no sympathy for her. She had tried to ruin my life and the lives of countless others for greed. After the trial, things slowly returned to normal. The HOA was dissolved, and the remaining properties in the development voted to form a new, more transparent association with strict oversight rules. I was asked to serve on the board, but I declined. I'd had enough of HOAs to last a lifetime. As for the mineral rights, I was approached by several companies interested in developing the rare earth deposits on my property. After consulting with Dr. Hastings and Marcus, I signed a lease agreement with a reputable mining company. The deal included an upfront payment of $5 million, plus ongoing royalties based on extraction. With that money, I helped Thomas Reed repair his home and paid off his medical debts. I also set up a fund to help the other victims of the HOA fraud recover their losses. Grace Mitchell received full reimbursement plus additional compensation for her suffering. It felt like the right thing to do. The mining operation began a year after the trial concluded. It was surreal watching the heavy equipment arrive on my property, knowing that beneath the dirt lay minerals worth tens of millions of dollars. The company estimated they could operate for at least 15 years, and my royalties would continue throughout that time. I quit my job in Oklahoma City and focused on managing the property and the financial windfall. It was strange, going from worrying about a fraudulent lien to being wealthier than I had ever imagined. But I tried to stay grounded and remember how easily it could have gone the other way. 2 years after everything happened, I received a letter from Patricia Henderson. She was writing from federal prison, and the letter was an apology. She admitted she had been consumed by greed and had convinced herself that what she was doing was not really wrong. She expressed remorse for the harm she had caused and asked for my forgiveness. I read the letter twice, then put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I would forgive her, but not yet. The scars were still too fresh. Life moved on. The story of the HOA fraud became a cautionary tale in Oklahoma and beyond, covered by national news outlets and even a true crime podcast. I gave a few interviews, hoping my experience would help others recognize and fight back against similar schemes. I also became an advocate for HOA reform, working with state legislators to pass laws that increase transparency and accountability for homeowner associations. Oklahoma passed a bill requiring all HOA liens to be reviewed by an independent mediator before filing, and other states began considering similar measures. Looking back, I realize how close I came to losing everything. If I had not questioned the lien, if I had not hired Marcus, if Dr. Hastings had not discovered the mineral deposits, I would have been another victim. The HOA would have foreclosed on my property, stolen my mineral rights, and I would have been powerless to stop them. But I did fight back, and it made all the difference. Justice was served, the criminals were punished, and I ended up better off than I ever imagined. More importantly, I helped protect others from falling victim to the same scheme. The mining operation continues to this day, extracting rare earth elements that go into electric vehicles, wind turbines, and advanced electronics. Every time I see one of the company's trucks leaving my property loaded with ore, I think about how different things could have been. I still live in the same house on the same 15 acres in Osage County. The broken window has been repaired, the mailbox replaced, and the security cameras remain active. I never did catch who was harassing me after the arrests, but it stopped once the trial concluded and the defendants went to prison. Marcus and I remained close friends. He used the publicity from the case to grow his practice, and he now specializes in HOA disputes and property rights cases. He has helped dozens of homeowners fight back against abusive associations, and I am proud to have played a part in launching that work. Dr. Hastings continued consulting, and we stayed in touch as well. He often joked that my case was the most exciting project of his career, and he used it as an example when teaching geology students about the real-world value of their field. Thomas Reed passed away last year at the age of 78. I attended his funeral and met his children, who thanked me again for helping their father. He had spent his final years in peace, living in the home he had nearly lost, and that meant everything to me. Grace Mitchell became a friend. She moved away from the HOA development and bought a house in town, using the settlement money as a down payment. We still grab coffee occasionally and talk about how crazy the whole experience was. As for me, I learned valuable lessons about standing up for yourself, the importance of good legal counsel, and how easily systems meant to protect can be corrupted by greed. I also learned that sometimes the land beneath your feet is worth more than you ever imagined, in more ways than one. The rare earth elements extracted from my property helped power thousands of electric vehicles and contributed to America's push for energy independence. Knowing that something good came from all the chaos and stress makes it feel worthwhile. I never joined another HOA, and I never will. When people ask me for advice about buying property, I always tell them the same thing. Read every document, question everything, and never assume an organization has your best interests at heart. If something feels wrong, trust your instincts and fight back. The black sedan that used to park near my property never returned after the arrests. I suspect it was someone connected to Patricia Henderson or Robert Caldwell, trying to intimidate me into dropping the case. It did not work, and I am glad I did not let fear stop me from pursuing justice. I occasionally drive past the old HOA office, which is now abandoned. The building sits empty, windows boarded up, weeds growing in the parking lot. It is a fitting monument to what happens when power is abused and greed takes over. The mining company built a small office on my property to coordinate operations, and I sometimes visit to check on progress. The engineers and geologists working there are passionate about their work, and they have explained to me in detail how the extraction process works and why rare earth elements are so critical for modern technology. I have also become something of a local celebrity, though I try to avoid the attention. People recognize me at the grocery store or the hardware store and want to talk about the case. Most are supportive, but a few blame me for getting their friends or family members sent to prison. I try not to engage with those people. They do not understand that Patricia Henderson and her co-conspirators made their own choices, and they have to live with the consequences. The legal fees from the entire ordeal were substantial, but the award for attorney's fees from the court and the eventual settlement from the restitution fund covered most of it. Marcus also gave me a discount, knowing how important the case was beyond just my personal situation. I've thought about writing a book about the experience, but I have not decided yet. Part of me wants to move on and leave it in the past. Another part thinks there is value in sharing the full story so others can learn from it. Maybe someday I will sit down and write it all out. For now, I'm content living quietly on my property, managing the mining lease, and enjoying the financial security I never thought I would have. I travel occasionally, visiting places I always wanted to see but could never afford. Last year I went to Alaska and hiked Denali. Next year I'm thinking about New Zealand. The experience changed me in fundamental ways. I am more cautious now, more skeptical of authority, and more willing to ask questions. I also have a deeper appreciation for the legal system when it works correctly, and for the people like Marcus and Catherine Stone who dedicate their careers to fighting for justice. I keep Dr. Hastings's geological report framed in my office, a reminder of the moment when everything changed. The colorful maps and technical diagrams do not mean much to most people, but to me they represent the truth that saved my home and exposed a criminal conspiracy. The rare earth mining industry has grown significantly in the past few years, driven by demand for electric vehicles and renewable energy. My property is now part of that larger story, contributing to America's transition away from fossil fuels. It is strange to think that 15 acres in rural Oklahoma could play a role in something so significant, but that is exactly what happened. I have also become more involved in my community, serving on the board of the local historical society and volunteering at the Veterans Center where Thomas Reed used to go. Giving back feels important after everything I've been through. Sometimes late at night I sit on my back porch and look out over the land. The mining equipment is lit up in the distance, working around the clock to extract the precious minerals. It is a surreal sight, and I still have moments where I cannot quite believe this is my life now. I think about the day I found that certified letter taped to my door and how terrified I felt reading the lien paperwork. I think about the moment Dr. Hastings told me my property was worth millions. I think about sitting in the courtroom watching Patricia Henderson being sentenced to prison. All of it feels like a movie, not something that actually happened to me. But it did happen, and I survived it. More than survived, I won. And in the process, I helped protect others and hold criminals accountable. That is something I can be proud of. The mineral rights that Patricia Henderson tried to steal are now generating wealth that will last for years to come. The royalties continue to flow in, and I have invested wisely to ensure financial security for the rest of my life. I have also set up a trust to fund scholarships for geology students and legal aid for homeowners fighting abusive HOAs. Marcus told me recently that my case has been cited in several other legal battles involving HOA fraud. Judges and attorneys across the country are using the precedent to fight back against similar schemes. That kind of impact is something I never imagined when I first hired Marcus to help me fight a lien. Looking forward, I am cautiously optimistic about the future. The criminal justice system worked in my case, but I know that's not always true. Too many people lack the resources or knowledge to fight back against powerful organizations. That is why the advocacy work feels so important. I have spoken to state legislators about strengthening laws protecting homeowners from HOA abuse. Some of those conversations have led to real policy changes, which is incredibly satisfying. If my experience can prevent even one person from going through what I went through, it will have been worth all the stress and fear. The harassment stopped completely after the trial, and I have not had any safety concerns in over a year. The security cameras remain, more as a precaution than a necessity. I sleep better at night knowing they are there. I have also reconnected with old friends and family who supported me through the ordeal. My brother flew in from Colorado during the trial and sat with me in the courtroom. My college roommate sent care packages and encouraging texts. Those relationships deepened through the shared experience, and I'm grateful for that. The mining company recently told me they have found even larger deposits than originally estimated. The extraction could continue for 20 or even 25 years, and the royalties will be correspondingly higher. It is almost too much to process, but I'm trying to stay grounded and remember what is truly important. Every day I wake up in my home, on my land, knowing that I fought for it and won. That feeling never gets old. The mortgage is paid off, the bills are covered, and I have the freedom to live life on my own terms. Not many people can say that. I've also developed a new hobby, studying geology. Dr. Hastings has been patient in teaching me about rock formations, mineral deposits, and the science behind rare earth elements. It is fascinating, and I wish I had learned about it earlier in life. The Oklahoma landscape looks different to me now. I see layers of history and geological processes everywhere I go. That ridge in the distance is not just a hill, it is millions of years of sediment and uplift. That creek cutting through the valley is not just water, it is a force shaping the land over time. Understanding the earth beneath my feet has given me a new appreciation for the world. I've thought about what would have happened if I had just paid the lien. $27,000 would have been devastating financially, but I could have scraped it together somehow. I would have lost the mineral rights, the property value, and my self-respect. Patricia Henderson and her co-conspirators would have gotten away with it and moved on to the next victim. The thought makes me angry even now. But I did not pay. I fought back, and that made all the difference. It is a lesson I try to share whenever I get the chance. Do not let bullies win. Stand up for yourself, get good legal help, and trust that the truth will come out. The Meadowbrook Hills. HOA is gone, dissolved, and replaced by a new organization with strict rules and oversight. The remaining homeowners seem happier now, no longer living in fear of arbitrary fines and fake violations. That is another small victory in the larger story. I have been contacted by people from other states asking for advice on fighting their own HOA disputes. I do what I can to help, usually by connecting them with attorneys who specialize in this area. Marcus has built a network of lawyers across the country who handle these cases, and they have been remarkably successful. The media attention eventually faded, which I was grateful for. Being recognized everywhere I went was exhausting, and I prefer a quieter life. The story still comes up occasionally, especially when there is news about HOA reform or rare earth mining, but I'm no longer the focus. I have also started dating again, something I'd put off during the legal battle. There is a woman I met at the Historical Society, a teacher named Laura, who has her own small farm outside of town. We have been seeing each other for a few months, and it is going well. She knows the whole story, of course, but she is more interested in who I am now than in the drama of the past. Life feels normal again, or at least a new version of normal. The mining operation is part of the background now, something I check on occasionally but do not obsess over. The royalties arrive like clockwork, and I have a financial advisor managing the investments. It is all routine, which is exactly what I wanted. I am writing this as a way to process everything that happened and to leave a record for anyone who might face a similar situation in the future. If you are reading this because your HOA filed a lien or is trying to take your property, know that you have options. Get a lawyer, gather evidence, and do not be afraid to fight back. The system can work if you are persistent and have the truth on your side. I am also writing this to remind myself how far I have come. 2.5 years ago, I was a terrified homeowner facing financial ruin. Today, I am secure, successful, and at peace. The journey was hard, but it was worth it. The final lesson I learned is about gratitude. I am grateful for Marcus, for Dr. Hastings, for Catherine Stone, for the jury that saw through the lies, for the judge who dismissed the lien, and for everyone who supported me along the way. I am grateful for the second chances I have been given and for the opportunity to help others. I am also grateful for the land itself. This 15 acres in Osage County saved my life in more ways than one. It gave me a fight worth fighting, a purpose when I needed one, and a future I never imagined. Every time I walk the property, I feel connected to something larger than myself. The rare earth elements beneath my feet were formed millions of years ago through processes I barely understand. They sat undiscovered until technology advanced enough to need them and someone smart enough to find them. That timing, that luck, changed everything for me. But it was not just luck. It was also choice. The choice to question the lien instead of paying it. The choice to hire an attorney. The choice to investigate and to fight. Those choices mattered, and they made all the difference. As I sit here on my porch watching the sunset over the prairie, I think about Patricia Henderson in her prison cell. I think about Robert Caldwell stripped of his law license. I think about the justice that was served and the lives that were protected. And I feel at peace. This is my story, the story of how an HOA tried to steal my mineral rights and how I fought back and won. It is a story about greed and justice, about corruption and courage, about fear and determination. It is a story I will carry with me for the rest of my life. The mining trucks continue to roll past my house, carrying millions of dollars of rare earth elements to processing facilities. The royalty checks keep coming. The sun keeps rising and setting over this beautiful Oklahoma landscape, and I am still here, living on the land that is rightfully mine, grateful for every moment. That is how it ends, and how it begins again.